Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And hello again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen. It's the dog days of summer. SummerSlam is over. Bash in Berlin's coming up soon. All in Wembley is next week. All Out is 3 weeks from then. from next week. A lot of wrestling going on, and we're going to talk about a lot of it here this week on the Juice Box. Before, of course, we get into all of that, as always, if you would like to follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen. Follow me on Instagram. You can check out all of my vintage wrestling memorabilia at Juicy Wrestling Closet. Additionally, if you go to YouTube at JuicySteen, you can listen to this show. Every time the RSS feed updates, you will get the episodes there. And if you go to the following places, you can also listen to the Juice Box. Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, of course, via iTunes, Spotify, juicysteen.podbean.com. And if you do listen to it on Spotify or Apple via iTunes, leave a rating and review. It really does help the show grow. So last week was pretty interesting in the realm of this show in particular. Considering we had 2 episodes, we had the traditional Juice Box episode, but we also had the Sip series featuring Tim of the Revolution Twitter account, which was a deep dive into the LA Knight Revolution, the LA Knight fandom that's really burgeoning these days. LA Knight, now the United States champion. A lot of great stuff coming from LA Knight in the last year and a half or so. And Tim is at the forefront of that wave of positivity and fandom for LA Knight. And it was really cool to, talk to someone at length about why LA Knight? Why did he choose to back this guy? And, Tim hadn't watched wrestling in a while. LA Knight caught his eye. Oddly enough, or ironically enough, to those who use what I'm about to say as a negative, but Tim found, LA Knight was bringing forth stuff from the Attitude Era, from back when, that really was positive in the mind of Tim, of, these are the best, he's got this enthusiasm, the charisma's there, he has a certain air to him, and it was positive things taken from The Rock or Steve Austin, as it were, and I know a lot of fans really don't, not a lot of fans, but there's definitely a pocket of fans that view homages to older wrestlers or wrestlers that came before as a negative, or ripping them off, and I just don't see it that way, because there have been plenty of wrestlers throughout the years that have taken from wrestlers before them, and as I stated in that interview, entertainment by nature is very subjective, is very difficult to have original ideas. As time progresses, there's only so many new ideas out there to be had. So for Tim to realize, hey, this guy, LA Knight's coming through. He's got this aura about him, and he reminds you of the good stuff from back in the day. And I don't know, it was really positive look at how LA Knight has changed one fan's life, which is actually, the account that he runs has almost 30,000 followers. I think it absolutely helps, a lot of people, and I think a lot of people love LA Knight. for those same reasons. So it was really cool to touch on that. And, on the selfish side, I was thrilled in discussing Tim's work with WCW Magazine in the late 90s. He also revealed to me he had a 1-800 hotline and a pro wrestling newsletter throughout the 90s that gained some traction for sure. Seemingly most of the stuff that Tim has involved himself with has gained a lot of traction, which is really, really cool and a great trait to have, that you know how to build a brand, you know how to reach out and elevate and gather and promote, all these great tools really that a business should look at, but has his own entity. He's been able to parlay that into the Revolution, as well as other ventures that, again, he discussed in the interview that we had, but him talking about him listening to the scrambled audio of Halloween Havoc 1995 blew me away. That was probably my favorite anecdote from the entire interview. So if you've made it to this episode, check out the SIP series, episode 97, I believe, where I discuss at length WCW, LA Knight, and pro wrestling in the 90s with Tim from the Revolution. So check that out for sure. Shout out to Tim. We will touch on a couple of things today. We will absolutely discuss what happened this past Wednesday on Dynamite, leading into All In, which we got some news in regards to next year's All In already. So that will be later on in the show. We'll probably close the show with the AEW discussion, because there's a lot going on. And in regards to programming on the Juice Box, I mean, quite frankly, the next 3 weeks will probably be, at the bare minimum, you've got All In Wembley predictions next week. The following week will be Bash in Berlin predictions. And then the week after that will absolutely be AEW All Out predictions. Now, I would wager a guess and say that within the next 3 weeks of the Juice Box programming, you will probably find at least one more episode in that feed to satiate, and to add to whatever we're already putting out in regards to prediction shows. News comes down the pike, certain things happen, maybe I'll get a SIP series. I'm not really, just ruling anything out. So as of that, though, I mean, absolutely the next 3 episodes, within the next 3 weeks, there will be some, for sure, solid predictions. We'll probably get Josh Eisenberg in for at least one of those. I might go solo on one of them, and we might have some new participants in the prediction game as well. But we're gonna see how that goes as time progresses on. A couple of interesting dates as I'd like to discuss. Not really this week in pro wrestling history, but kind of, Actually, yesterday, August 15th, 2004, the 20th anniversary of SummerSlam 2004, where Randy Orton won the World Heavyweight Championship for the first time. And I believe, now he is a 14-time world champion. I'd say he should probably get to 15 world titles by the end of the whole run, but I'm not really sure if that'll actually happen. We'll see. But Randy Orton, of course, defeated Chris Benoit in the main event. Orton referenced this on Raw, and it was pretty, entertaining to see him just kind of say, it's 20 years since I won the world title for the first time. it's just fascinating to me how you dance around, not mentioning that who shall not be named, but I think Orton's a pro's pro, and he got through it. But the rest of this card, the Dudley Boys defeated London, Kidman, and Rey Mysterio in a 6-man tag. That was Bubba, Devon, and Spike, of course. Kane defeated Matt Hardy in the Till Death Do Us Part match. John Cena defeated Booker T in the first of the Best of 5 series for the U.S. title. Edge retained his IC title against Batista and Chris Jericho. Kurt Angle defeated Eddie Guerrero by submission. Triple H defeated Eugene in a barn burner. JBL defeated The Undertaker by DQ. And then, of course, Orton winning the world title. Not the greatest show ever, really not the best. But I don't know. I feel as if, it's such a historic night that happened. I just feel like, Orton now being a 14-time world champion 20 years later, I'm not sure how many people would have really felt it was possible. I don't know how many of those folks thought, Orton's going to do it. He's really going to be, he's the legend killer, but now he is a legend, which is really, really cool. So I don't think you're going to see Randy Orton get that 15th world title against Gunther, but crazier things have happened. But I'll tell you right now, it ain't happening. We have, wrestlers born on this day, August 16th. Fritz von Erich. Kind of important. If you've watched The Iron Claw, you know how important Fritz von Erich was and the entire von Erich family in Texas. And we'll talk about Texas with AEW later on in this program. Uncle Elmer was born on this date. Dick Murdoch as well. Buddy Landell. A lot of interesting characters. Cedric Alexander was born then as well on this date, August 16th. But not too many other notes in regards to wrestlers being born on this day. In regards to shows, really nothing crazy. Like I said, SummerSlam 2004. We also had Hard Justice 2009, which main evented Kurt Angle, Matt Morgan, Sting in a 3-way for the TNA World title. It's okay. Hard Justice 09, right around the tail end of the best years of TNA, I felt. From 2009 to 2005 to 2009, you'll be hard pressed to find as solid in-ring work combined with innovation and just overall excitement than you will with TNA in 05 to 09. But that all being said, I also do want to mention, unfortunately, this was some very, very sad news over the last couple of days, but the great mind for the business, Kevin Sullivan, passed away at the age of 75. So a pretty long life for a pro wrestler that lived through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. To be quite honest, 75 is pretty good. But man, the amount that he contributed to the business, a really strong Florida-based wrestler here, where he really helped out a lot of Florida and how Florida was perceived with championship wrestling from Florida. Of course, he goes to Jim Crockett Promotions in '87, formed the Varsity Club, which was Rick Steiner, Mike Rotunda, better known as IRS, which was a really cool group. And then that kind of ended, but we got Kevin Sullivan with Cactus Jack, Bam Bam Bigelow got in there as well. Lesser known, Kevin Sullivan then managed One Man Gang, Black Blood, which was Billy Jack Haynes. And he, kind of went away a bit. Went to ECW, where he had a pretty interesting time there. But this is where the final WCW run is really where I became a huge, being a huge Kevin Sullivan fan, being aware of Kevin Sullivan. 94, he comes in where he started teaming with Dave Sullivan, who was kind of this like oddball, dyslexic character that the Nasty Boys didn't really like. And it turned into Cactus Jack and Kevin Sullivan defeating the Nasty Boys for the tag team titles. Slamboree 94, the Broad Street Bully match. I've mentioned that match before. I think there could be a SIP series where I talked to somebody who was there, but I don't know when that would actually take place. But that's definitely in the works. I do know a contact there. But that was, wow, just what an amazing match that was. And then, they had a few battles with the Nasty Boys in 94 that were just brutal. Of course, Sullivan defeats Cactus in a Loser Leaves Town or Loser Leaves WCW match at Fall Brawl that year. And then, of course, this is where the Dungeon of Doom began. The Butcher, a.k.a. Ed Leslie, a.k.a. Brutus the Barber Beefcake, came in, who was accompanied with Avalanche, and they were the three faces of fear, which was pretty... Look, the Butcher and Hogan at Starrcade 94 is, quite frankly, maybe the worst Starrcade main event of all time. That being said, watch Halloween Havoc 94. You probably should watch a couple of the promos leading up to it from Hogan's side whenever he's with, at the time, Brother Brudeye, as they're palling around and everything's great. But Hogan gets attacked by masked men, and, who is it? Brother Brudeye is seemingly there for all of those moments. But Havoc 94, Hogan Flair in the cage, Hogan wins the match, and the masked man comes back out, but he gets caught, and who is it? It's Brother Brudeye. And it was... The match, sucked at Starrcade 94, but the reveal of truly, Hogan's actual best friend being the guy that turned his back, and, Bobby Heenan so eloquently put it, that man has butchered a friendship. That's an amazing little storyline, and I feel like that gets overshadowed by how terrible the match was, but, that was the early part. That was the three faces of fear, but then we get the Dungeon of Doom, proper in 95 with Kamala, the Barbarian, Ming, the Yeti, Hugh Morris, Loch Ness, One Man Gang, Big Bubba Rogers, or as Dusty Rhodes would refer to him as, Bubber, and the Giant, which we also got the Butcher as the Zodiac and Avalanche as the Shark. And briefly, Vader was a member, but of course he leaves WCW, and it was probably going to turn into Vader and Giant at Starrcade 95. That's unfortunate, but anyway, Sullivan has the Dungeon of Doom. It really wasn't that great. The Giant does win the world title. Also did the Alliance to End Hulkamania for Uncensored 96. Even though that failed, Hogan was never black and yellow again, for years, for 3 more years. So kind of ended Hulkamania for a bit. And then, of course, I could not ignore this. I mentioned Chris Benoit earlier, and I know that's... some people just don't want to discuss it, but as a wrestling historian, I will reference it. Chris Benoit versus Kevin Sullivan, Great American Bash, 1996. These guys beat the tar out of each other all throughout the arena in Baltimore, Maryland. Great match. Go out of your way to see it, but just fond memories of Kevin Sullivan as a pro wrestler and then as a booker, that really helped a lot of stuff throughout the mid-90s in WCW, which was really cool. And, you know, even in Ring of Honor, he came out and helped BJ Whitmer and Punishment Martinez, a.k.a. Damian Priest, which was a little interesting angle. So Kevin Sullivan's been all over the place, man. And I really love the work that he did as a wrestler and as Booker. Of course, the I Respect You Booker Man, Brian Pillman thing. So many Sullivan moments that have occurred throughout the years. So rest in peace to Kevin Sullivan, 75. Let's go to current day wrestling. I mean, we have spent 20 minutes purely on historical pro wrestling, which, you know, I like doing here on this show. It's my wheelhouse, my bread and butter, as they say. But let's get into current wrestling. Monday Night Raw. So we're leading to Bash in Berlin. We now have 3 matches. Gunther versus Randy Orton, of course. World title on the line. If Orton wins, he'll go to Raw. Gunther goes to SmackDown. And then Kevin Owens versus Cody Rhodes for the undisputed WWE title. But we finally do get, as I predicted, pretty much as soon as the opening match of SummerSlam concluded, the Terror Twins, Damian Priest and Rhea Bloody Ripley versus The Judgment Day, which will be Dirty Dom Mysterio and Liv Morgan. Mixed tag rules. And I am looking forward to this. I think that it's the perfect opportunity. Rhea and Damian, you know, were the leaders of the Judgment Day, and effectively throughout the whole thing have seemingly both turned face by the end of it. And I think it's masterful how that booking has turned that way. And I'm here for, you know, we're not going to do predictions yet, but I have a feeling Dom and Liv might get the upper hand here. Especially, you know, with a Finn Balor interference where we could get a Hell in a Cell match or a crazier match down the line at Bad Blood, but we'll see. But Raw this past week was pretty damn good. Rhea Ripley opened the show, and of course we got the match announced, and we had Damian Priest taking out Carlito. It was a pretty quick match, pretty forgettable. Couple of promos on this show as well. Just in-ring promos, some video promos, an interesting way to do things. A local competitor got destroyed by Odyssey Jones, which I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen here. Final Testament did say, though, that Kofi is trying to replace Woods with Jones, where we'll get a 6-person tag down the line. Alpha Academy versus American Made. Of course, American Made gets the win. Ivy Nile trying to get Maxine into the group. It's not happening. There was a crazy suicide dive on this. Unbelievable superplex spot as well. Really like what they're doing there with the Alpha Academy and American Made, although American Made is a terrible name, but it is not as terrible of a name as the Pure Fusion Collective, which seems like a vague plan to promote collections or side. It's so vague. It doesn't sound like anything. But that group is, of course, Shayna Baszler, Zoe Stark, and Sonya Deville. So there was a no contest. It was a number 1 contenders match for the tag titles on the women's side. Don't know what's going to happen. The team name is just... It's a head scratcher, to be sure. Candice Michelle was shown in the crowd, which was kind of bizarre. Roll Tide, but yeah, random for sure. Orton talked about Gunther. Of course, they had a little face-to-face here. It got really intense for a brief moment here. Orton going back and forth with some good jabs, but Gunther bringing up Bob Orton Sr. and, of course, Orton's father. And, I feel like they were about to get physical in there, but Drew McIntyre, comes to the ring, and as the music is hitting, Orton hits an RKO on Gunther. At the same time, CM Punk comes out and hits Drew McIntyre. So the RKO on Gunther and Punk hitting McIntyre, using Drew's belt on him and really beat him down. His Drew McIntyre's back, I believe, was posted on social media, and it looked very, very red. So seemingly we might get a strap match. Is that what? I don't know. I feel like we might get a strap match for Punk and Drew at Bash in Berlin. I think that would be a fun match. A match, again, Punk can work with. And truthfully, if they're going to do a Hell in a Cell at Bad Blood, if they do one, it's going to be Punk versus Drew. So we'll see. Maybe Finn and Priest would have a regular match at Bad Blood. I don't know if they need a stipulation. They already did Finn versus Edge, so we'll see. But I like that a lot. But yeah, this is pretty good. I'm Randy Orton just kind of getting into this match with Gunther here. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to Gunther and Orton. He literally a legend killer that turned into a legend, now facing a champion who doesn't lose. It's a very interesting match. We did get Bronson Reed versus The Miz, and that was the end of that. Bronson Reed, of course, hit the tsunami, won the match. Looking forward, they said Seth Rollins is going to be out for a while, quote unquote, several weeks, something to that effect. And I don't know. We'll see what happens if You got to think Bronson Reed's going to continuously go forth and, defeat how many different guys before Rollins comes back and get some revenge. Because, with R-Truth taking the second brunt of it, Rollins gets the first round of tsunamis. Truth gets the second round. Saying he had, internal bruising, cracked ribs, which I do believe is what they said Rollins had. So that's pretty... Hey, at least Bronson Reed is being consistent in the injuries that he's providing some of the other superstars on the Raw brand. But like I said, I really think that it's going to be Seth Rollins out for a bit. Maybe Bronson Reed takes out another guy. I just wonder if we're going to get this match at Bash in Berlin. Because if we don't, they have nothing planned for September. And October 5th is Bad Blood. So, and, we are rapidly approaching football season. Monday Night Raw, it's always very, very uphill for Raw to compete with Monday Night Football. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if they try to pull the trigger on a Bronson Reed Seth Rollins match, maybe on Raw, spike a rating of some sort. I think it's very possible that they do that if they want to spike a rating to get Bronson Reed Seth Rollins on the show on a Raw in September, unless they want to pull it off at the PLE. But let's continue. We close the show 2 out of 3 falls. Braun Breaker, Sami Zayn. Breaker gets the win. This was wild. A lot of crazy match interactions here. There's a spot where Braun pretty much lawn darts Sami Zayn to the ring keeper, or the ring keeper, the timekeeper's area, into that chair that they have over there looked pretty intense from the angle we saw. Then you get the other angle that we didn't see on TV, and it looked even more brutal. So that man, Braun Breaker, said it before, I'll keep saying it. He is a specimen. But Breaker gets the win, and now we will see who is next. For sure, we'll get to see who's going to go at it. Yeah, we'll have to see what the next Bash in Berlin only has 3 matches so far. That sweet spot of international shows is 5 or 6 matches. So I think we're really close. We're halfway. You got the mixed tag, 2 world title matches. You'll probably get Punk McIntyre in a strap match. Maybe a tag title match, whether that's men or women, I'm not sure. And then I don't know how you leave Seth Rollins off the card. So if Rollins could come back in time to face Bronson Reed at the show, I think you've got a pretty solid-ass card for Bash in Berlin. But I do want to kind of relate these two things. Seemingly, and this could be a match at Bash in Berlin instead of one of those title matches I said, the tag titles. Pete Dunne and Sheamus seemingly are on a collision course, and I'm not talking Starrcade 90. But these two guys, if they have a one-on-one match, it is going to be very reminiscent, in my eyes, to William Regal and Fit Finlay from, if I had to pick one, just on WCW Uncensored 96, where the two guys beat the hell out of each other. I believe Regal got a broken nose. It's one of the most brutal, just straight-up one-on-one matches you'll see. And these two dudes, Pete Dunne and Sheamus, are just, if not more, physical than those two guys. And I think they could really shine in a one-on-one capacity where they're just beating the hell out of each other. So that is something I'm looking forward to. Also, another comparison that I'm looking at here, the way Adam Pearce has been, trying to intervene with Bronson Reed here seems to me very similar to, when Vader first came into the WWF in 96 and proceeded to, he was pissing people off, and, WWF at then time president Gorilla Monsoon, legendary wrestler. Adam Pearce is a former wrestler, worked for over 20 years, Ring of Honor, all that stuff, NWA. Gorilla Monsoon, legendary wrestler, as the president, got in Vader's face, and Vader not only took him down, but hit him with the Vader bomb in one of the more interesting and more memorable moments of the Vader WWF run. And I think we are very close to seeing the same type of thing happen, where Bronson Reed would hit Pierce with a tsunami or 6. And maybe that is the trigger that brings Seth Rollins back into the fold for a one-on-one match, but we shall see. So looking forward to Bash in Berlin. I think we've got a really cool show coming up. And talk about shows coming up. I answered a tweet the other day, and I just want to mention it because I found it to be pretty fascinating. But it was, at this moment, predict who and what the main events for both nights of WrestleMania 41 will be. And, there's plenty of different ways to go about it. I said that on night 1, it would be Cody Rhodes defending the WWE title against main event Jey Uso. And on night 2, it would, of course, be Roman Reigns versus The Rock. I think that's a very fair way to look at it. Probably won't get Cody and Jey anywhere else other than a main event, and I just don't know how you put it on an, I don't know. If Roman and Rock are having a match, it has to go on last on night 2. But night 1, I think Cody would have no problem wrestling Jey. I think that would be a huge match. Jey Uso winning the Royal Rumble, calling his shot, against, good friend Cody Rhodes, former tag team partner and champion with. Give me that every day of the week. So that's my all too early prediction for WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas. Let's get to Dynamite and what the current All-In card stands to be, as we are just, as of this recording, 9 days away. So, it's rapidly approaching Sunday, August 25th. I think it's 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I love the afternoon shows. Wembley, that's just a really cool way to go about it. And I'm looking forward to seeing the show with all the pageantry as it did last year. I thought All In last year was a great show, top to bottom. Of course, Samoa Joe, CM Punk was probably arguably the best match on the show. But, of course, that was Punk's last stand in AEW. So we'll see what they've got in store here. We had Mercedes Moné against Hikaru Shida for the TBS title. Look, I don't want to be critical, but I just want to bring this point up that something AEW has been doing. They've been here, to be fair, they've been consistent in doing this. And to an extent, I like it because it keeps you guessing. It doesn't make every match predictable, but in a way it does. Where the champion, women, men, TBS, world, even the world title, we get that both in this show. Where Monet seemingly will face Britt Baker at All In, which is a massive, dream match that a lot of fans, including myself, have wanted for a very long time. Sasha Banks versus Britt Baker, and, of course, Sasha is Mercedes Moné now, but as she was in WWE and as Britt Baker was coming along, it's like, man, wouldn't that be an amazing match? We're going to get that at All In. But Moné defends the title that she's defending, at the at All In on Dynamite, It's just unfortunate that, it kind of seems like you can't, you put together a match for All In, but the problem is, okay, what are you going to do up until then? And Mercedes Moné, for lack of a better term, isn't the best when it comes to mic work, and unfortunately, it's not her strong suit. So I get why they would put her in matches, but it's like, you put the title on the line, let's say we really think Sheeta's going to win. Okay, so then she wins. Does that mean Britt gets Sheeta at All In and we don't get the dream match? Or we get the dream match, but it's not for the title because they're not as good as Hikaru Shida. Same thing with the Eliminator matches. You have the Eliminator match where someone wins. They have to defeat the champion to get a match of the champion, but the champion already has a huge match in the main event of All In. It's like, okay, if he loses, then it's like, here's the thing. An Eliminator is a little different because you could have someone cost the champion their match where the Eliminator wrestler gets the opportunity and, it's really irrelevant. It's really to further the story, but it doesn't actually happen. But I get it. It's both for, you don't want to make it seem like the matches are just set in stone, nothing can ever change it, card subject to change. But it's kind of frustrating because as much as they try to make it, you never know who's going to win. It's going to be Moné and Britt at the pay-per-view. Sheeta's not going to win. So it's almost like a futile thing to try to pull off. But Moné gets the win. Camille, of course, as the Brick House. I believe Camille Brick House, they're referring to her as. She, kind of got distracted, and we get the two, Baker and Moné brawling to end the segment. Like to see someone come in as a heater for Britt Baker. I don't know if that'll be Jamie Hayter, maybe. Wouldn't that be pretty badass to happen at Wembley? We'll see. But, yeah. Hangman Adam Page versus Jay Lethal. Hangman, of course, gets the win. I think we absolutely could see Jeff Jarrett and Hangman in a match at All In. And here's the other, not issue, but how many number one contenders are we going to have? I believe Darby Allin won a match. He won a match to where I think it's Grand Slam, he's going to have a world title match. But at All In, there's going to be a Casino Gauntlet match for a future world title match. Bryan Danielson is the number one contender already. It's just that I'll tell you the positives. It definitely sets up potential matches that you could alternate at your leisure throughout the year. If Darby is set up in September, but whoever, let's say someone, Takeshita wins the gauntlet match or whatever, that match is just a future match. It doesn't have to be the next match. It doesn't have to be before or after Darby's match. It could be whenever. So there is some flexibility there. And I will say that is a better problem to have than having title matches or eliminator matches when you have a huge match 2 weeks away. So I'll give AEW credit for the amount of contenders they're trying to put in there to validate going for the championship. So it's really not that bad on that end. Orange Cassidy, of course, gets the victory in a triple threat where he gets the number one spot in the Casino Gauntlet match. Not sure if that's where you want to be, but it's where he is. Although, is the Casino Gauntlet Okay, yeah. So here's the thing. You actually do want to be number one because the first person to get a pin wins it. It's not a traditional gauntlet. It's random intervals, and it's just whenever someone gets a pinfall or submission when the match is over. So I guess, I didn't realize it was that particular gauntlet match with the casino element, the randomized. You want to be first. You have a chance to win first. So OC gets the victory, will be number one in that match. Young Bucks and the Acclaimed. Young Bucks win by DQ. And we'll get FTR versus the Acclaimed in a match on Collision for a title shot at All In. We'll see how that turns out on Saturday. The Patriarchy, of course, had a promo as well discussing how they're going to keep all their championships, which is, it's a trios championship, but how they're going to maintain that going forward. I love Okada week to week. Really all I need to say. We'll talk about the All-In card, but it was interesting how, the Young Bucks get to Caster. They were going to use the title, but FTR interferes, but because of that, it's a DQ. So now you get the Acclaimed and FTR in a one-on-one. I think FTR will probably win, so we get FTR Young Bucks, which will be an incredible match. So let's have that happen. Swerve versus Wheeler Yuta. This was not an eliminator, but Bryan Danielson was at ringside, and Swerve just kept talking trash, and he hits 3 house calls in a row. Then he does the kicking your effing head in to Yuta, and the ref actually DQs Swerve because of how relentless Swerve was being. And, now Wheeler Yuta has a win over the world champion, even though it's a disqualification. But he did it. He did it. But Dragon gets in to try to help Yuta, and he takes a house call to the face. And that's how we close the show. And I do want to mention as well, a lot of great video packages on this. We had a Tony Storm video package. With Mariah May, of course, but we get the Green Day Time of Your Life Good Riddance song as a promo backing song for Bryan Danielson, as he potentially has his career, it is in jeopardy at All In, but it's potentially over at All In. And he wanted to, I believe he said before he would like to put forth he wanted to have that song, basically, as the background. He might have said it was at his funeral. I'm not really sure, but it absolutely was gut-wrenching to watch. As a Seinfeld fan, I have a love-hate relationship with Good Riddance, because Good Riddance was like the first, like it was used the first time as like the close out, the see you later, the send off, the graduation song, if you will. It was really first used in that regard with Seinfeld during the Chronicle clip show right before the finale. And I can't watch I can't watch the end of the Chronicle. As soon as that music kicked in, I just shut it off. I don't even watch that episode, but if it's on, I shut it off before that song. I just can't do it. It's too sad. And I'd rather not invoke those types of emotions when Seinfeld brings me a lot of happiness. So it is what it is. But let's go to the all-in card before we actually do a little round of Ask Juice. Right here as we record, we are getting last-minute interactions with Ask Juice via Wrestling Nation. So we'll touch on that as well. All in right now, we do have Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway versus Willow Nightingale and Ishii. And that will be on the pre-show. We will have Timeless Toni Storm versus Mariah May for the AEW Women's World Title. MJF, Will Ospreay for the AEW American title. Sure. Jack Perry, Darby Allin, which is now a coffin match for the TNT title. Jack Perry coming off more and more like Raven. And, I mentioned that parallel with Mark Briscoe hitting Jack Perry in the face with a steel chair while he was handcuffed to the cage, a la Tommy Dreamer and Raven in ECW. You know how Tony Khan loves ECW and referencing it. He's a huge ECW fan. Additionally, we've got Mercedes Moné versus Britt Baker, DMD, in the TBS title match. Orange Cassidy and a bunch of other guys, seemingly, for the Casino Gauntlet match. Winner gets a future world title match. Chris Jericho versus Hook, a last chance match for the FCW title, where if Hook loses, he can't challenge for that title as long as Jericho is champion. I'm going to say it's FTR, but it'll be either FTR or the Acclaimed versus the Young Bucks for the tag titles. And then title versus career, Swerve Strickland versus Bryan Danielson. That will be wild, to say the least. Because at this point, I think Bryan Danielson's going to win. But they're really setting it up with the promos and the video packages and using Good Riddance. Who knows if this truly will be it. But we will see soon. And also, before we touch on some Ask Juice, huge news came down the pike yesterday. AEW All In is going to take place in 2025 at Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas, the baseball field that houses the Texas Rangers Major League Baseball Club. Will be getting its first ever pro wrestling event, a stadium show in North America for AEW, a huge deal. They can hold, I think, 40 or 45,000 at Globe Life, so I think ideally you'd want to shoot, and that's for baseball. I think you'd like to shoot for maybe 35,000 and advertise it and sell it out at 35,000. And I think you'll have one hell of a visual there. But AEW doing the residency in Texas, I think, has benefited this decision. And I'm looking forward to it. It'll be next year, July 12th. It will take place, a Saturday night show. So we will see what happens. All in Texas, July 12th. Huge deal. They also mentioned that AEW All In the following year will take place in London again. I'm not sure if it's going to be Wembley again. I'm not sure if they're going to go somewhere else, but I find it interesting. A couple reasons. Wembley last year, they said 81,000, I believe, but I think it was a little less than that. Of course, wrestling always has those inflated numbers, but it was still pretty damn impressive. This year, I believe they're only at 50,000 tickets sold, but I think it'll still look pretty damn good. My thing is, I think next summer, Wembley could get SummerSlam, and boy, if they sell it out, if they put together a huge, if Wembley gets SummerSlam next year and SummerSlam can get even one more person on the attendance, I really, really think that it could have, that is something that, they talk about a war, with AEW and WWE. I think it'd be fantastic if SummerSlam could go in, maybe sell less than AEW. Wouldn't that be wild if that happened? So we'll see. Looking forward to seeing what happens in regards to that, but let's do a little Ask Juice to close out the show. We got quite a few questions, and a lot of these, involving certain wrestling topics I will answer. But Josh Cross, of course, loves dropping in random NFL or just sport-related questions. We're going to go rapid fire with Ask Juice here. How will the Steelers, Pitt, Penn State, and USC finish this football season, record and playoff-wise? I think the Steelers will go 10-6, or 10-7 rather. I think Pitt should bounce back and probably be a 5 to 6 win team. Penn State, I'd like to see I believe that they could absolutely be in the college football playoff now that there's 12 teams. Potentially USC as well, but I really don't know. Really don't know what that'll be. Win-wise, it's too early to tell. First game though, coming up in a couple of weeks, Penn State and West Virginia. So you got to win that game, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I really just wish Penn State, West Virginia, and Pitt all played each other every single year. Pitt versus WVU, Pitt versus Penn State, and Penn State versus West Virginia every year would be fantastic. But don't know if we'll ever see that in our lifetime. Rob King or Bob Pompiani for Steelers play-by-play. Well, Rob King got selected, and I think he does a fantastic job. I would have liked to have seen Bob Pompiani in there, but to be fair, he does so many other things in the Pittsburgh media world that I feel like he's probably a little relieved that he doesn't have to do the additional work, although he does masterful work for the preseason games. But I think, Pomp is suited for... I think he's the perfect person for what he does. And that's not to say he couldn't do a great job as the main guy for the Steelers, but I think Rob King's going to surprise a lot of people. I've been a fan of his work for a while as well. Would you be more happy with a Steelers or Raiders Super Bowl? So I am a Steelers fan forever. I've grown up in around the Pittsburgh area my entire life, so they will always be a fan favorite of mine. But in 2009, I became a Raider fan. I adopted the team, oddly enough, by going to a Raiders-Steelers game in 2009 randomly, and it was the year after the Steelers won the Super Bowl, and they were a heavy favorite, but Tomlin teams love playing down to their opponents, and the Raiders were god-awful that year. Bruce Gradkowski, the local kid, comes in, wins the game, and I just was like, wow, that's a really cool... I could not believe that the Raiders pulled it off. And I just started kind of researching the team and organically became a fan, and I never really looked back. And I root for both teams, but if they face each other, I root for the Raiders, pretty much because they haven't had as much success since I've been a fan of theirs. So I'm more interested as a Raider fan to see that happen. So in this regard, I would be more happy with a Raiders Super Bowl. I would be thrilled to see another Steelers Super Bowl. because in my lifetime I've seen them win 2 and lose 1. And technically in my lifetime I was alive for another one, but they lost it on my birthday, actually, in 1996 when they lost to the Dallas Cowboys. But Neil O'Donnell couldn't get the job done, so I was not privy for another win. So 2-2 in my lifetime. So I'd love to see the Steelers win another Super Bowl. But if the Raiders got to the Super Bowl and won it, I would be, oh man, it would be fantastic. But the real question here, I would be the most happy I think I could be with a championship with my favorite teams would be if the Pirates were to win the World Series in my lifetime. I don't think it's going to happen realistically, but I've thought about this. I think Greg Brown would be like crying in the booth if they won. I think I would be. I think it would be such an emotional. Just even making the World Series would be unbelievable, and because it's not going to happen. But like, I think that's the Pirates winning a World Series would be the most happy I could be as a sports fan. But the Raiders winning the Super Bowl would be pretty damn cool. So. Josh Eisenberg weighs in with a couple here. Would you be in favor of a Seinfeld reboot? Not really. I think the season 7 of Curb Your Enthusiasm Seinfeld run was kind of like a reboot. It's kind of like showing you this is what you would have gotten. And it's not that great. It's just like the characters being older and you know what they're going to say. That's why it's easy to write a spec script about it. Like, you know how they're going to react based on 9 seasons of material. So it would just be them as older people doing it. I wouldn't mind, though, if you had like an animated series. If you watch there's a couple of features on the DVD sets for Seinfeld. Certain seasons have them. I think starting in like season 5, maybe, where it shows. It's called Signimation, and it shows a scene from a Seinfeld episode, but it's animated with like interesting black and white drawings, but with the audio of the characters. And I think if you did episodes like that in a realm of what you could do with writing a script or whatever, but having the voices of the characters, you could keep the characters young in this time frame and make it work. Because I don't think seeing the guys in their 60s and 70s would really do a lot for me. So it is what it is. Josh Cross, will Ronell ever appear in the Juice Box? Yes, he was on as the SIP series with the Rev Ron Hunt, and he actually was just successful in the Rough and Rowdy event in West Virginia, sponsored by Barstool. He actually was training to face a guy, and that guy dropped out, and Ronell had to face someone different without preparing for it, and he still won. So shout out to the Rev Ronell Hunt. So let's see. And this one, I'll answer this one. It's a fun one. Does Kenny Pickett have a bust in your preseason Hall of Fame? Sure, but it's a bust of his hands and their miniature scale. But yeah. The preseason is tough to judge anything. Last year, a lot of Pittsburgh sports fans were duped. We were duped because, the Steelers looked pretty immaculate, pun intended, and then they were mediocre at best throughout the year last year. And I'm glad that Pickett's not there anymore. I think it was tough and not unfair to both him and the team, but it was just not a good fit at the time, because I don't think Pickett. I think it was a really, really great year Pickett had with Pitt, where they won the ACC. That's it. I think it was an outlying year. It boosted his stock very high, and I don't know. I think he could be something in the NFL, but I don't think it's a starting quarterback. I think as a backup quarterback, he would probably thrive. And to be fair, and look, I've said this before, and I don't want it to really come to this fruition like this, but Pickett plays for the Eagles now, another PA team, of course, and the Eagles play the Steelers in Philadelphia. And if Jalen Hurts for whatever reason, could not play in the game, and Pickett got in, and I would be fascinated, I would be enthralled, and I'd honestly want to see Pickett thrive and do well against the Steelers. Hell, I'd love to see Pickett torch the Steelers, because it'd be fun, it'd be entertaining. So, and, a Pitt guy handing the ball off to Saquon Barkley, who's a Penn State guy, love that. I don't know, it'd be a lot of cool angles with that, and it's Pittsburgh versus Philly, and it's a huge hockey rivalry, and it used to be a Major League Baseball rivalry, but it's really not a football rivalry, so it'll be intriguing. But shout out to Wrestling Nation for all your riveting questions. There are plenty of questions I did not answer, but I think we're probably better off not answering those, at least publicly. So this has been an interesting episode of the Juice Box, to say the least, but like I said, we have got quite the slate the next couple of weeks. At bare minimum, we will have 3 straight prediction shows, with All In Wembley next week, Bash in Berlin the following week, and the All Out show in Chicago for AEW in the 3rd week. So 3 straight weeks of predictions. There could be a SIP series in there. I will say this, Main Event Maniacs, the next installment, if you will, is going through the process of being edited and figured out of where we're going to place that, likely in September. And I will reveal more details as I finalize the editing and talking about it with Brian and Jay. But it looks pretty good from all I've heard thus far, and I just don't know where I'm going to place it and what we're going to do with specifically the time frame of it. But Main Event Maniacs will be coming back in a big way sooner rather than later. So keep an eye and ear out for that in September. But as always, follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen, on Instagram at Juicy Wrestling Closet. Listen to The Juice Box on YouTube, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, juicysteen.podbean.com, and on Spotify. On YouTube, it's at JuicySteen, just like the Twitter account. And if you do listen to it on iTunes or Spotify, please leave a rating review. That would really help out the show. So, it has been a week. It has been a week that was. RIP Kevin Sullivan. We will talk to you guys next week with a steady dose of prediction shows coming up on the Juice Box. But any other interesting information that comes down the pike, I'm sure we'll touch on it right here as well. So, I'm Juice Springsteen, and I will see you guys next week for another edition of The Juice Box. That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.